Welcome to Baseball Biz on Deck. I am Mark Corbett, and with me, of course, is Mr. Mat Germain. How you doing today, Matt?
I'm doing excellent. How about you, Mark?
Brother, I am enjoying it. It is a special day today. I've marked it in my baseball calendar. I'm going to be able to celebrate it every year, the Angel Hernandez Day.
Yeah, it actually happened. I know you like the majority of MLB fans probably had some sort of moment when it was announced.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, the poor guy has come under such criticism. You know, if you look at Angel Hernandez, and there's probably more videos up on this poor son of a gun than anybody else out there. I know he's complained to MLB about possibly being discriminated against, but my gosh, that man should never be allowed into any kind of postseason game or any other. So maybe he and MLB came to some understanding, some sort of agreement, but the man is retired, and I wish him well. But gosh, the game will probably be a little better. Maybe.
You know, if you're teaching new umpires on how not to umpire and how to not make it about yourself, he would be the prime example to show. I mean, it's not a popularity contest for umpires. Let's not get, anything out of sorts on that front. They're not there to make friends on the field. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. It depends. Each personality is going to be different with the players anyway. So the point is that the game's supposed to be about the game, and the calls should be important to some degree. And I still come back to the fact that anybody over the age of 60 should just be automatically, okay, it's time to retire now. Because, at some point your reflexes, your eyesight, all of those things start to get to a point where they're not keeping up with the speed of the game. So just on that alone, never mind all the, controversies that he's caused over the years and all the times he's made it about himself. The fact that he's 62 years old, that's enough to me. Yeah, go retire. See, CB Buckner is 61, by the way.
Well, see yeah, thank you. That begs another question. Who do we get to poke at now that Angel's gone? I mean, we had Country Joe West for a while, but
Yeah.
he left us, and now Angel's leaving us. So is it Buckner's going to be our next pivot person to point to?
It kind of points to the fact that if you're going to have some sort of personality out there and you're going to be, what we would call flamboyant, like calling strikes really loud and doing this and making your name known, then you're going to be a target at some point because you're going to miss some calls. That's the name of the game for umpires. But I think how they react to it says more. So a lot of the Angel Hernandez issue was the arrogance with which he conducted his job.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't the fact that he was making right or wrong calls. He wasn't the worst. It's been proven in the statistics. Like he was maybe, in the bottom 10. Yeah, maybe. But he's not the actual worst. So I think it was highlighted more because of how he dealt with those calls and the people and the situations when guys got angry.
Well, he had the color and he had the personality. That's the speaking of color and personality, because I do think of Country Joe West and all that he achieved. And you say, well, what was Joe going to do after he left? Well, lo and behold, he started a podcast.
I haven't heard this. I knew he did some music, but I didn't hear about the podcast.
Oh, yeah. He came out with a podcast. I think it lasted about 20 episodes, and it was weird and varied. I mean, he would talk with some people in the game, but one of his guests was Charles Barkley. Yeah. And another one was, another one was a country singer too. No, Emmylou Harris. Emmylou Harris was one of them too.
That's interesting mix, man. That doesn't make any sense to me in my head. How he even got in contact with those people.
Well, he's Country Joe West. I'm sure some dollars behind him because if nothing else, he was colorful, but it didn't last as long. And it's kind of going off on this rampart for just a moment. It's kind of interesting looking at other people who've done podcasts. I know that let's see, CC Sabathia, one of my favorite pitchers of all time, just wonderful person, and he probably is in real life, just not the persona I saw on the mound pitching at the Rays. But he he had his own was it R2, C2? He was with some other fella too. I can't remember. Obviously, C2 was for CC Sabathia. And that also lasted, I think, about a year. But one of my favorites is a Tampa Bay Ray. And I think there's only 4 episodes of his podcast. Something I think Neil Solondz helped Pete Fairbanks with. It was called Horsing Around with Pete.
Oh, I like that. That's awesome.
It's well, Fairbanks is a colorful enough guy anyway, and he has a great voice. It's worth digging it out, folks. It's Horsin, Horsin, around with Pete, and dig it up. I don't think he's done anything with it in a couple of years, but it was fun to hear him and Solon's kind of banter back and forth, and some of the other dialogue they would have with other players as well. So
I think if Tyler had stuck around, they would have had an R-rated version called uh, something else around with Tyler.
oh gosh, oh
With
Tyler.
the amount of cursing he does in certain places, I wouldn't doubt it. It'd be hilarious to listen to. And then you beep everything out whenever it came across. Uh,
Well, you remember one of the celebrations you did in the Rays locker room, and he said something in front of Trisha Whitaker live,
yeah,
and Trisha being the reporter there, and as soon as it came out of his mouth, he realized he said, "Oh!" He looked at the camera and said, "Sorry, mom."
exactly. And she said, I can't remember what her response was, but there was somebody that asked her about it, and she said that, oh, he has such a potty mouth or something like that. It's funny.
Oh well, coming back to the actual game of baseball, as bad as I felt about what's going on with the Rays lately, we mentioned Glasnow. All I can think is the Dodgers took 5 in a row, man. The Reds took them to the woodshed. I mean, geez, Pete, I did not anticipate seeing the Los Angeles Dodgers lose 5 games in a row. Woof. I can almost feel good about the Rays.
Almost. The Dodgers, I keep saying it over and over again. Like they're too thin overall, and they are susceptible to some losing streaks because of that. So if their big guys aren't running hot, then they had, the bottom part of their lineup you can navigate through. So they really need those guys to be wearing guys down in order to have success. And sometimes you just don't get there. I heard Otani's getting close to throwing again though, and
Oh,
that's really interesting.
yeah, I really wants to see that. That's something. My gosh, yes, I can't wait to see him back on the mound.
Mhm.
But you look at the money that goes into the Dodgers, and you look at the money that goes into the Yankees, and you look at the money that goes into the Mets, and
Mhm.
the Mets. My gosh, man, you figure that somebody putting that soup together, as much as it costs for all the ingredients, that thing would be serving up hot, and it's anything else that's been served cold.
I would. So imagine if the Rays had the number of injuries that they have, but they had a quarter of the system to work with. And that's basically where the Mets are. And they've just changed leadership within the team. I don't know who's giving that leadership advice by any means, but I do know David Stearns knows how to build a team. And I think, Ronnie Mauricio going down to injury at the beginning in spring, that really set them back for the full year he's out. And he was their top prospect, basically. So it'd be like Junior Caminero being out for the year. So he he was expected to play a lot of second base, but really the pitching injuries that they've had, those are the ones that have set them back a lot. Pete Alonso not performing the way he should. They still have an older outfield overall with Starling Marte and a couple of other guys. Brendan Nimmo is awesome when he's playing. And I think Francisco Lindor is having a really strong season.
Yeah.
But I think we saw when they came with Brett Beatty at third base, when they came to Tampa, um, there's just some youth and lackluster play at key positions on the field sometimes. Center field, third base, second base, where they have lapses in judgment. They really hurt their guys at the worst time in the game. Um, so I would say they're not far off. Edwin Diaz, I think, is the biggest disappointment for them this year, and I don't think he's going to be back for a little bit now. He's on the injured list with a shoulder issue. So like he was expected to really carry the bulk of the pen, and they also lost Brooks Raley, which used to be with the Rays, and he's down for the year. So
Oof.
it's one of those things where I know what they had to work with, and to be fair, I don't think they've called on enough guys from their minors system. I thought they would be more aggressive on that, but I think they know where they stand, and they probably don't want to make those calls right now. They would rather just wait until they have more control over those players and then call them up at that point.
Well, here we are, Wednesday, May 29th. And I know earlier you and I both saw a part of what happening with the Mets, and
Mhm.
Alonso got hit at the plate. Have you seen any information on the injury on that?
Not yet, no. I imagine we're gonna have to do x-rays, and with fingers and stuff like that, like it tends to be more tedious. Like if there's any swelling or anything, it can sometimes hide the injury. And sometimes it could be such a fine fracture that they don't really see it right away. So I don't know. We'll find out soon though, I'm pretty sure.
Well, you and I were talking before the show, and we both had hopes that that Tampa boy could one day return here and be playing for the Tampa Bay Rays.
I can see it. Like he's lowering his value enough right now where if the Rays wanted to take a chance on him as a DH, he wouldn't be playing first base. So he would be a full-time DH, might even not play. He might almost be the same kind of role as when they brought in Nelson Cruz, where he's in the lineup the majority of the time, but he will get games off when the matchups don't make sense or, if his splits dictate it.
Well, as long as we're talking about DHs, let's talk about the DH position for the Tampa Bay Rays. Let's actually make this a Tampa Bay Rays show again. Uh, but my gosh, Matt, you put out a poll last week asking folks about some different changes that might come up, and see what you were asking about who may or may not be traded. And I think one of them was Harold Ramirez in the other series. Is that correct?
It was Harold Ramirez or Ahmed Rosario.
Oh,
And
okay.
and the reasoning behind it is the roster's just built wrong. And what I mean by that is that they're playing against left-handed pitchers about 20 to 25% of the time. And when you're looking at their plate appearances against left-handers, they're doing well. They have 102 weighted runs created, which means that they're about 2% better than the average in MLB. That's not great, but it's solid
Yeah.
as a team, right? But that's the problem is that they're built to do well against left-handed pitching. Against right-handed pitching, they're one of the worst in the league. And it has to do with the fact they have too many right-handed batters in the lineup that don't perform as well against right-handed pitchers. And so they need to shed one and add a left-handed bat or somebody that can dominate against right-handed pitching. They really, 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 really are not doing well against right-handed pitching. And when you're in a league where 80 to 75% of the pitchers are right-handed, that's a problem. So when you're thinking back to last year, right? You had uh, Luke Raley and Josh Lowe, which were just raking, right? When we started the season,
Yeah.
Brandon Lau was chipping in from the left-handed side. So you had those three monster left-handed bats carrying the lineup against all right-handers that came in and wore them down enough to, along with Yandy having an awesome season as well. He's good against both sides of the plate. So you had, the ability to attack right-handed pitching. Right now, there's just everybody's ice cold except for Richie Palacios against right-handed pitchers. So it's no way to build your roster. And so I feel like, and to top it off, when Kevin Cash did have Austin Shenton aboard, he didn't even play him. How do you leave a left-handed bat that lethal against right-handed pitching on the bench constantly? I don't get it. So, and it's the same thing that's happening with Harold Ramirez right now. He's not seeing much playing time. He's playing tonight, but I think it's only his second game out of the last seven that he's starting.
Wow.
So you're starting to see some of that, and that's my point is sort of, first of all, it doesn't do Harold any good because he's not playing enough to keep his bat going and to keep his timing down. And second of all, when he does get in there, he's cold. He's got to find his form again and his timing. And so It's not doing anybody any service to not be in the lineup consistently so that they can get their form right. And I think they needed a left-handed bat some way, somehow.
Yeah, and I was hoping to see more from Brandon, but I got to tell you, man, it was exciting watching him the other day hit that triple. Oh gosh,
That was awesome.
that was amazing. I thought, good, he's coming back. He's coming back. So we'll see if he can, continue to compound on top of that and put some more success with it. But uh, as far as who's coming up to bat, Kevin's last few game has mixed up the lineup a little bit. I mean, Diaz, don't you think Yandy was his first tonight? Was he leading off yesterday? I can't remember.
No, no, he did what I suggested, which is great. I love to see it. So when you're looking at I don't only look at left and right. I also look at what the pitcher's strength is. Like if somebody's throwing a lot of breaking balls or a lot of changeups, I think you need to stack the lineup to attack those, the pitcher's strengths, so that you're actually having success early in the lineup. So Richie Palacios happens to do extremely well against the breaking ball and the fastball. So when the guys are dominant in those pitches, put him at the top, get that going. And when it doesn't, then you can put Yandy back up and then put somebody like Johnny DeLuca or somebody like that behind him, whenever it makes sense. Sadly, I think you were going to note that Randy has been slid down in lineup, and I heard Zach on WDAE today asking whether or not they should send him to AAA. And he asked Denard Span, and Denard Span said, I think I would give him 50 more at bats, and then if he doesn't figure it out by then, he would consider it. He
Wow.
would send them to AAA. And I don't disagree. Uh, the hard part is if he keeps playing like that, then you're probably out of the playoff picture anyway.
Yeah.
So by sending him down to AAA, you're devaluing him in terms of a trade asset, right? So I don't know if they actually would, but I understand the concept behind it.
I think they need to make sure that idea has been put in front of Randy because, yeah, well, come on. There's certain things about motivation. I don't know what it takes for a player. I know that a player can get things in their head that doesn't allow them to execute the way they like to. And Randy, we had a lot of expectations for, and it's just not happening. And while we're talking about moving, the potential, the question with Denard's spent potential of taking Randy down to AAA, we're looking at players possibly coming up and going down. We talked about Austin Shenton. I know earlier on this season, you were saying, are they really giving him a chance? Or is he getting enough opportunity to be out there?
Mhm.
And maybe not. But you said even more so, I think it was Alex Jackson. And my gosh, there's a decision, I think, where the young man has been given plenty of opportunities. He's done well, but he's not done Rays well. He's done AAA well.
Right.
And and by the way, folks, check Matt out on Twitter, and that is at Matt, MAT underscore Germain, GERMAIN underscore. You're going to find a lot of this information. Matt does a lot of good work and research there. But if you're talking about making some changes, Matt, I know you've talked about how Rene Pinto is looking good in AAA, and why wouldn't we bring him up?
He rakes. He's the best Rays hitter to this point in terms of weighted runs created against right-handed pitching. So it's exactly what the Rays need. But for some stubborn reason, they continue to value defense at the catching position over any offense. It boggles my mind. I don't understand why. And I understand what I do understand is that Alex Jackson was doing well offensively in AAA. He really was. He's just looked completely lost at MLB level. So like you said with Randy Rosarena, at some point, sometimes you need to take a step back and kind of go, maybe we should give you a little bit of time away. I do want to ask you this though: if Randy Rosarena does, for whatever reason, either get sent down or traded out of Tampa this year, what is his legacy going to be in Tampa?
Oh my. Oh my. It's I mean, he'll be an also ran is what it's going to look like.
Mhm.
I mean, will Brett Phillips have a larger following in 5 years than Randy Rosarena as far as a former Tampa Bay Ray? I don't know.
It's a good question because they literally built Randyland for him. They embraced the whole playoff thing. They had, they've given him every opportunity. Personally, I think that a lot of it has to do with the way that Randy feeds off of crowds. And when you're in a crowdless environment, it doesn't really get him going. I remember watching him at the WBC. He becomes a showman when there's big crowds, when there's a rowdy crowd. He just lights up and he becomes a completely different person and different player because of it. Same thing in the playoffs. He lights up because he sees the spotlight and he wants to perform under that spotlight. So if they do end up trading him at some point this season, I hope he goes somewhere like Chicago. Like go to the Cubs, have big crowds there all the time. Get to perform in the biggest stages and actually be yourself or the best version of yourself because he's not being that with the Rays this year. And I noted it like in spring, I noted it early. His persona just tells me he's not into it this year for he could have personal reasons like other than what I'm saying. Could be a million different reasons. But I feel like he's at his best when he's in the spotlight, high pressure environment that he can actually shine in.
Well, there's no doubt a lot of players feed off of synergy with what's going on in the crowd.
Mhm.
And that's always been a challenge at the Trop, but you'd hope with Randy Land, I'd always hoped that I'd see that full every time they're there, but it's not.
Mhm.
And that has to kind of pull him down a little bit. But I'm hoping that there's nothing overly personal going on. But like you said, that could very well be the case. Man, he's got so much. He's got the energy, the face. He's got that positivity when you see him on camera. Uh, but I don't know. I don't know what it's going to take, Matt. That's for sure. What else do we want to say about our Rays? I know last week I had you start off with everything going on with the minor leagues because it was the one place where we had some shining moments.
Yeah, there's always shining. That's part of the reason I love to watch the minor leagues when it comes to the Rays. But you were talking about Tyler Alexander, re, you know, today, and there just so happens to be Joe Rock, who's also a left-handed pitcher who I think is getting, I don't want to say that he's ready right now because you have to do things a little bit more consistently at a certain level before they'll deem you ready to add you to the roster. Because once you're added to the roster, you're it. Right? You can get called up at any time. And right now the Rays also have Jacob Lopez on the 40 man. And I don't know if they've decided what they want to do with him yet. So they may take some other moves, but he's been doing well overall. He like the last game that he threw was extremely strong, and tonight I've been watching on TV, and he's got 2 innings in. He's only allowed 1 hit, and he's got 2 Ks, no runs. He just keeps getting better. I find he's got that kind of uh, the same kind of thing as the Rays did with Jake Diekman, where they maximized the left-handed, slot that he's using, and kind of getting him to hit certain spots that make it really hard for the hitters to square anything up. So when they do get hits, they're usually singles, they're usually dribblers. And once in a while he'll get hit a little bit harder. But ever since come on, he's been getting better and better and better and allowing fewer and fewer of those things over time. So I think you're going to see him sometime soon. So that's a positive. Another one is Trey Morgan in high A. He's just tearing the cover off the ball. Continues to be one of the best hitters in the minors. And now they've got him playing some left field because he's at the same level as where Xavier Isaac is. And so they can't have them both playing first base as much as you would like to. I've never seen a team do that. Play two first basemen. That would be unique. But he's just having a great time. The Rays are starting to make some of the minors shuffling in terms of promotions. Um, Enzo Polino is a guy that got pulled up from FCL and over to A ball, and they'll keep making some adjustments. One guy that I'm curious about that's coming back from injury is Ryan Cermak, who's in the FCL right now on a rehab assignment. And I always liked him as a center fielder. He's a great fielder. And when he gets, but I think he's probably going to get assigned to A plus. which would mean that he would be there with Brock Jones, and both those guys play the game so hard on the field, and they have really intriguing tools as outfielders. So I'd like to see them both play together again in high A. So all the way through, I think you're looking at the Rays system, and we're like on the brink of a glut of promotions going on, and it's fun to watch.
Well, that seems to be where we're going to have to keep our enthusiasm because right now, what we're in the middle of a run here, a series with the Oakland A's, having lost last night, and tonight we got Pepio pitching, and I think the A's just put one up on the board. So we had had a series of losses, 6 in a row, one more than the Dodgers, But
Miguel Andujar has driven in all 4 runs against the
oh,
Rays.
oh
He had
Lord.
the 3-run home run last night, and he's got a sacrifice fly tonight. So, the A's are a pesky group. I think they're getting some benefit from some of the trades that they've made recently, like Estes today, that's on the mound. He's a product from the Murphy deal that they did with the Braves. And these are talented guys. They're not nobodies. And I think a lot of people still think of the A's as being chock full of nobodies. But the truth is that they do have some talent on board that can really drive some games home. So if they pitch to their top caliber, they can beat almost any team, really.
Well, we'll see how it continues to develop, but I don't know, brother. I mean, it's not a 500 season right now, but I feel confident the Rays can turn it around. And I know it's got to be frustrating for Kevin Cash, and it's but you can only do so much with personalities. They're either going to step up or they're not. They're either going
Well,
to be feeling it or not.
exactly. I think the realization has to be this, though, Mark. So I used to put a lot of weight on the fact that Jeffrey Springs was going to come back, Shane Baz was going to come back, maybe Brendan McKay would chip in, Junior Caminero would arrive. None of those things are happening. None of them. So the quote unquote uh, heroes that you're looking for are going to have to be more of the fringe guys that they give opportunities to, like the A's who are here tonight uh, are doing. You have to give those guys a chance and play them, not call them up and have them on the bench. Play them so that they can show you what they can do. Example, Ruben Cardenas is a guy with tons of power. The Rays are looking for power. Give him a shot. Tristan Peters is another guy, plays the field great. He's a left-handed bat. Hey, you know what? Give him a shot. What do you got to lose? I'm not saying they have to go full out on that, but you have to pick one or two that you have the most confidence in and see where it goes. And if it doesn't work out, then you know what you have. And there are guys on the roster that you can definitely DFA issue. Nobody would miss them.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is that there's nothing wrong with them trying a couple of those things and seeing if it sparks something. Because all you need is for one of those to get hot, to really light up the roster, maybe give it some energy. And I think that's where, when Josh Lowe came back, you started to see a little bit of that again. And I think he is the driving force. Uh, but he's obviously dealing with too much stuff to the point where he can't carry the load like he did a lot of the end of last year. So I'm hoping he comes out of it, after the All-Star break, maybe. But he's got some hurting body parts that need some resting, obviously.
Oh yeah.
Uh, and I'm not sure that Eric Neander to be honest, Stu Sternberg are willing to invest much in this roster with the way they're performing right now. Like how do you make those moves, those aggressive trades to get yourself better this year when you're looking around going, well, geez, are they really this bad? Like, are they going to figure it out at all? So yeah, I get, I get all of the angles. I get the fan frustration. I get the front office frustration. I get Kevin Cash's frustration.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just been a frustrating year overall.
Yeah, I don't think that the front office will abandon the team this year with practically a third of the way into the season. But you do have to wonder sometimes. You say, should I? Is it worth investing at this point? I think what they need to invest in is some of the ideas that you put up earlier, and much like what's happening with let's try shaking up the lineup. Let's move these guys around a bit do some things of that nature. I think that was a positive. And what you meant talking earlier about Ruben Cardenas. Hey, Ray's front office, listen, these are some of the things that's trial. I mean, not all these things are going to kill the finances of the company. I mean, these are changes that we hope can make a positive difference. So, Matt, keep telling everybody that, would you please?
Will do. And then Brandon Lau hit another triple to make it square to 1-1. So
Oh,
he keeps tripling his work effort to to chip in some wins. So hopefully they can keep building on it.
all right, everybody, pick that vibe up from Brandon on the dugout, man, because it needs to channel all through the rest of them. Because man, that is something we need to see for those Rays.
What do
Well,
you think the issue is with attendance right now? I haven't like I understand winning helps, but I haven't seen. So last year we got a bump, I think, because of a lot of things, and this year it seemed like the City Connect got a lot of people into the seats, and then there was a complete drop after that. So I'm wondering, like, are you hearing anything like? Because what I hear, listen to WDAE, what I'm hearing from some of the announcers is that they're getting more negative about the stadium issue over time, the more that it drags on, like towards the vote.
Well, that's something that's come up time and again as far as what people are saying. Well, I don't know. I mean, there's even as far as stadium talk, there's a story the other day pointing toward Himes and a development they had elsewhere in the U.S. I can't remember exactly where it was. I think it was somewhere out in Texas. And they kind of paused on it for a while, but it wasn't the same sort of setup where you're working directly with the city. It was a private developer. And when people see those sort of stories time and again about like, I've heard about the stadium for so long, I'm just tired of hearing it. I get that kind of response from some people, Matt, and I think it does take a little bit of shine off of the team and maybe the attendance as well and say, well, I'll just watch them on TV. And if they get really starting to look good and exciting again, if Randy starts really cracking it, if see Yandy start cracking it, well, yeah, maybe I'd like to go see him in person or play a series. I think where we're going to win most of them.
Exactly. No, I'm with you. I just wanted to know if there was anything like uh more, I guess, louder or more recent that had come out. And to be honest, like I'm still from being an outsider because I am in Nova Scotia. I'm still shocked that there is no aggression whatsoever from the Tampa side of things to kind of jump in and see if they can wheel them back towards the Tampa side. But I still don't understand that. Like, if you have a professional sports team, most cities around the country would be screaming to get the franchise into their downtown
Oh yeah.
core. Good. But for whatever reason, the Tampa side just wants nothing. And I still come back to, like, when I was at SB Nation with D Rays Bay, we were convinced that it's because all the people in charge there are Yankees fans.
I think that had merit.
Yeah.
I think that has some merit. I truly do. I believe that I've said this time and again. This is a city not of natives, but of people who've transferred their lives here. I
Mm,
mean, I've talked to before. I worked when I came down. I started working in the New York Times, but also the time there was also a lot of people from the Boston Globe down here, and I mean that's just one piece. But there's so many transplants, folks who came from up north to be part of what's going on in this area that one, they have an allegiance to the team they grew up with, and
mm.
two, yeah, I'll come watch the Rays when my team comes and plays, when the Red Sox come or when the Yankees come. But as far as what has brought this lack of enthusiasm now to even lower attendance, I don't have a solid answer for you that. I mean,
So there is some credibility to it in this form. If the Rays had been successful in going into Ybor, then George Steinbrenner Field would have had to either change hands and become a Rays affiliate, or they would have had to shut it down and build something else there. That's the way the MLB rules, state how close you can be to a stadium in another, area's perimeter, I guess. I think
so
it's like a 50-mile range or something like that.
So that's even with, but to remind folks, that's even with like a minor league. As long as it's affiliated with a major league team, there is a proximity rule about,
Right.
okay, yeah. as I think we've talked about that before, but it is, I can see where that could be an issue. And there is like it's a strong New York contingent in Tampa Bay of people who've come down from up north in this area. So anyway, I don't know, brother. Would like to maybe finish up here today with some good news, and that's what's going on with the statistics that the Major League Baseball has historically. And this has had to be a real task for people to try to get together. What I'm talking about is, as of today, the incorporation of the Negro League baseball players, their achievements, their box scores, all of that is being incorporated into the history of the entire Major League Baseball stats. So, once upon a time, you would not have heard of Josh Bell as far as being mentioned with anything to do with baseball, Major League Baseball, rather, but that has changed. What they've done is they've gone through all of these box scores that are able to pull up, all the records that are able to integrate, and you're going to see some changes. I mean, if you'll see Satchel Paige in there for all things. Okay, the lowest single season ERA, the man had 1.01 in 1944, so that puts him third amongst historically across all Major League Baseball pitchers with that type of ERA. And it's like, wow, man, to have the history side by side with that which we've promulgated for years in the regular Major League Baseball and have them included in this is huge.
Well, it just don't makes sense. Like, there's no reason to not have it this way. And I'm surprised, really, that it's taken this long. They've included other leagues into this, right? The Japanese league is included. So for it to happen while Bob Kendrick is still, you're talking about podcasts earlier, like his podcast and what he's doing, the work that he's doing for the Negro League's Baseball Museum is just second to none. Like,
Yeah.
you couldn't paint it any better. If you were to write a story and say, this person had done the best job possible with this, stadium issue, to spread the knowledge of what the Negro Leagues were all about, he has done an insane job, really. Like, if you're talking about a great individual that just with this news will be elated and will know that, they're finally included on an even level with all the statistics included, so they can measure things and they can even just to have them. So when you're doing searches, when your kids are doing searches and your grandkids are doing searches of statistics, they'll have questions about those players, now. And they'll say, oh, well, this guy was actually ranked here and here and here and did this, talking about stolen bases and everything else. Like, it's great to see it finally come to fruition. And then now they can kind of just digest it and promote some of it and say, wow, we've had some great stars play the game in all forms of leagues, and just cherish that.
Well, it's about time. It's one of those, it's about time. And certainly with all the information they have now, I'm glad they were able to pull it together. And Bob Kendrick, he's been a man of magic as far as trying to bring attention to the Negro Leagues. And it's still on my list of Kansas City, not so much to see the Royals and certainly not the 49ers, but to see the Negro League Museum and all that he has achieved up there with his staff. But looking today at the new numbers from Major League Baseball, if we look at the top batting average leaders, once upon a time, this is what it read the day before. It would have read Ty Cobb, number one, Roger Hornsby, Joe Jackson, Ed Delahanty, Tris Speaker, Billy Hamilton, and Ted Williams would have been the first few folks on there, starting out with a batting average of 366 with Ty Cobb. Now, with the incorporation of everything coming in for the Negro Leagues, a player everybody's pretty well known about anyways, Josh Gibson. He now tops the all-time career batting average leader with a 372 batting average.
Just crazy.
Yeah, I mean, and then you say you have Ty Cobb still in there right beneath that 367, but then you have Oscar Charleston from the Negro Leagues with 363, Roger Hornsby with from has been there before with 358, two new guys from the Negro Leagues, Judd Wilson 350 and Turkey Stearns with a 348. So look at that. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the top six, four of them are now from the Negro Leagues. And it's like it's going to be interesting. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people contorting this way and that about how statistics are measured. And that's fine. It gives some discussion to the game. But one thing I found interesting too is players who came from the Negro Leagues and then later joined Major League Baseball, people like Willie Mays. And, they're when they put all this together, Matt, they're limited to whatever information was out there. So when Willie Mays transferred from the Negro Leagues and came into Major League Baseball, the only stats that followed him was when he was with the Black Barons, and they were rather limited. So they only added 10 hits to his all-time record. And there had to be so much more than that. But
Exactly.
so there's a lot of folks that still probably won't get the full exposure of what they once achieved through the Negro Leagues, especially because they had so many other sub leagues through that as well. But it's an exciting day, I think, for baseball, and to recognize a lot of these men who made a big difference in the game. And I can only wonder if Satchel Paige was pitching across from a lot of the people in major leagues back then. They would have been quite surprised of what they would have to face.
Yeah, it begs the question, like, so will some of those statistics, they look back sometimes at who they put in the Hall of Fame and for what reasons. Could there be inductions that happen because when they've digested these statistics after a while, that they're like, hey, this person actually deserves it. So the veteran committee, however they do it, I think there's opportunities there because of this to add a few people that may not otherwise have made the Hall of Fame to the mix. So, and the same thing when you're looking at, because I always looked at it this way. When I know when Ichiro goes into the Hall of Fame, they're going to look at his Japanese league stats. They're not just going to weight the MLB stats. So, if it's that way, it should always be that way for all of them, depending, as long as it's a professional league, of a certain stature. It's not, I don't want to name any areas or countries, but as long as it's not an amateur league and
Yeah,
it's a
sponsored by
professional.
Bob's Meat Market this week, and yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think it's valid and it definitely should be included. But I'm happy. I'm glad for them.
yeah, I am too. So I think to me, it's one of the best positive things for baseball this week for me, and I'm just really glad to see it happen. And Bob Kendrick, yeah, I've got to dig in more into some of his podcasts because I got a lot of respect for him. I see some of what he puts on YouTube, and when other people interview him, and what he's achieved in just a few scant years, um, probably more than that. What he's achieved has just been fantastic as far as exposure and giving more attention to the achievements of all those players in the Negro Leagues.
Some people are just outstanding storytellers. My grandfather was one on my mom's side. He could just talk and tell me the same story 5 times, and I would listen to it every time like it was the first. And and they have a way of pausing at the right moments and drawing you in and saying things in a certain way with a certain life that just makes them, stand out. And so that's the way I could listen to Bob Kendrick tell stories all day, no doubt.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you had that with your grandpa, man. There's
Hmm?
good storytellers. So they're sometimes hard to come by. So it's nice that you had that in your life. Hey, tell me, brother. Okay, so again, here we are Wednesday. It's about 8:05. What's happening to right now with the Rays? What's the score?
The score is still 1-1 as far as I know, and Pepio's still on the mound, so that's a good thing in the fifth. I don't think it's going to be. I don't think he's going to get uh, a substantial amount of run support, although I hope they prove me wrong. But
Yeah.
in terms of the pitch count, just let me take a look here. He's at 64. So I'd say he could go 6 overall if he keeps going the way he is. He has one out right now in the fifth. So yeah, it's been a good outing. I noticed today in the first inning, when he's really amped, he seems to lose a little bit of his command, right? And he gets a little bit wilder. But when he's zoned in, he gives me some vibes of Roy Halladay and how he pitches.
Ooh.
Not his demeanor on the mound, but how he pitches, like the movement of the ball, in terms of the intensity and the aggressiveness in the zone and trying to draw contact early and not wanting to have high pitch counts. So when we talk about sometimes, the lack of complete games, I could see Ryan Pepio being one of the first to really start to bring that back into the fold for the Rays once in a while.
Well, I welcome that. I was glad when he came in. I mean, we know we needed somebody that's going to be again, and there's all kinds of questions. Oh, we're thinking, oh, Tyler Glasnow, but
Mhm.
Pepio seems to be proving himself and then some.
Yeah. Oh, I really like the stuff. Him and Bradley, like I said, they're really going to help the Rays drive things up. And if you picture those two with Zach Littell and then Shane McClanahan coming back next year, the Rays are going to be in a really strong spot. They're going to have Jeffrey Springs back at some point. I'm hoping they caught, I think it was a lat issue, they said. So if that heals up, I still have faith in Jeffrey Springs as long as the arm is healthy. And I mean, they could have two really strong left-handers and three extremely strong right-handers, and that's the right mix that you want to have. With a bunch of guys. Like, there's another name I'll throw out there. Another left-hander is Ian Seymour, who's just lighting up Double A, and I love his demeanor on the mound. He's like a raging bull. He's pounding the sand. He's walking around the mound after every strikeout or pitch, or he just seems like he's in the zone. He's really active out there and fun to watch. And I can remember when I watched the Expos as a kid, Carlos Perez used to pitch like that and be really animated, get into every strike and kind of have those poses like, yeah. And it drew you in, it brought you into the game. Pedro Martinez, his brother, used to be like that too. And he used to get really, kind of animated on the mound. So it's fun to watch sometimes when guys have a little bit more personality out there.
Well, I'm going to say it, man. From your mouth to Neander's ear. What you were saying earlier about looking at Ruben Cardenas and some other ones coming up, they're looking at what we have in our own system, and they pulled a few things that you were talking about before as far as changes in the lineup. That'd be interesting, and I would be the 55 at bats for a Rosarina. That
You're giving
is
them five more at bats, eh?
okay. Hey, what can I say? Yeah, that's five more than Denard gave him, isn't it? Yeah.
That's awesome. I like it. I like it. You're giving them extra breathing room.
Come on, Randy. Get ready for Randy Land. All right. Well,
That's awesome. You know what's gonna happen if they do send them to AAA or trade them. It'll be on a Thursday.
yeah. Oh gosh. All right, brother. Any other things we should cover or share with folks?
No, I'm starting to get primed up for the draft coming up next month.
Yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say next month. I think it's in early July, a little bit later than usual this year.
Hmm.
But there's some interesting names out there the Rays will be adding, and then I always get into it because I start thinking of promotions that are happening in the system, and then all those draftees getting added really fast because now we used to have like the long delay in signings and like you had to wait forever for guys to actually figure out how to budget their signings. I'm so glad
Yep.
that we're done with that. So now it happens fairly quick, and they're getting to the FCL right afterwards or low A. So you have to make room for those guys. So recently the Rays have released, I think, three or four FCL guys and low A guys that to make room for guys that they want to promote. And so you see a lot more of that because there's limited room. So they're forced to make decisions a little bit earlier. So I'm kind of looking at that and like there's a bunch of drafted picks that I don't know anything about. So doing some research on that end so I can be more educated when the draft comes around.
Well, man, I love all that you share, dude. I mean, whether it's on the show or on Twitter daily, folks, I'll say if you haven't been watching him, you should be checking out Matt on Twitter. And that's Matt, MAT _Germain, GERMAIN _. So at Matt _Germain _ on Twitter. So x.com, etc. Oh man. Well, Well, Matt, thanks again, brother. It's always fun talking with you about the Rays and everything else that's going on in the wild world of baseball.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure, Mark. And thanks for having me.
All righty. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us today here again on BaseballBizOnDeck.com. You can find us there, of course. You can find us Apple Podcasts. You can find us Spotify, iHeartRadio, and everywhere else there's a podcast. So thanks again, everybody, and we look forward to talking to you all again real soon. Special thanks to X-Take RUX for the music rocking forward.